So, Bobby Johnson, do you mean to tell me that humor can actually make real estate agents more money, or anyone in sales for that matter, more money?
Absolutely. Think about it. I mean, when people laugh, when you get people laughing, that's a visceral response to the moment. And so what you do is you immediately diffuse any tension, right? When you're laughing, you're not angry when you're laughing, or you're not nervous when you're laughing, right? You're not thinking about anything, but it's actually that feeling, that moment. So if you can create that in a sales conversation, which tends to be a tense conversation, or at the very least, it's a new engagement with a person. You're stepping into their home for the first time, right? So what better way to kind of just let the air out of the room with a little comic relief?
So what I found is that if I have somebody on the phone, I'm on a phone call with a prospect, right? And it could be you have your tense moments, as you just said. I feel like that once I'm able to get them to laugh, or at least smile at a minimum, I feel like I have my foot in the door, right? That leads to an open conversation to where I can possibly assist them. But until that moment, sometimes you can't really establish the trust. You can't establish the relationship that quick, especially. And humor definitely does it.
Absolutely. It's like an immediate injection, right? It's like what's that heart thing? When they stab your chest, and it's just like that adrenaline, correct, right? Immediately, it's an immediate infusion of connection, because that's what it is. Laughter is like, it's a connection. It's an immediate, right? It's a strong, immediate connector to somebody. So again, if you're able to get that to occur in the conversation, and the sooner the better, right? Because you then set the tone for the rest of the conversation.
Right. So my goal here with us meeting today, Bobby, and talking about this is to give agents, mortgage loan originators, anyone who's really in sales, something that they can walk away with and implement and, dramatically help their business. So, Bobby, you having been a professional stand-up comedian, would you say there's any correlation between comedy and sales?
I'd say there's a ton of correlation between comedy and sales, right? I mean, because again, it's a human interaction that you're having with another person, right? So two people communicating. So, we're always selling, right? Whether we're doing it professionally, or you're trying to pick up a girl at a bar. Not that I've ever done that. Yeah. We're constantly selling, or negotiating with your kids to listen to you, to eat the rest of their peas and carrots, the vegetables, right? We live in a constant state of selling.
Right.
So that correlation in comedy, on stand-up art, I'm selling laughter, right? In real estate, I'm selling homes. I'm trying to get you to buy into me to sell your home.
Right. My next question for you is, would you say that comedians are scripted? And I'm asking you that question because as the viewer, right, as somebody in the audience, it seems like they just came up with that right there at the moment, right? Like the way that they pace in the stage, the entire process, it seems so natural. So I thought that would be a great question for you is, how scripted are comedians?
Yeah, that is a great question. And it's an important one because, when we see people perform and you'll see some people that look so effortless and flawless and natural and free flowing, I guarantee you that person is 1,000% scripted. And the reason why it looks so natural is for one reason and one reason only, which the answer to this, Chris. They've done it a million times, right? It's just repetition, having that dialogue over and over again. People think that new jokes come out every day. No, jokes take months and months to craft. So you have to perform it. You have to do shows, over and over again. When I was doing stand-up, as a career, I would do a minimum 10 shows a week, minimum, right? And if I wasn't doing a show, I was practicing my craft, my set, right? Working on my whatever joke and crafting that, right? When I first started out, I would be at home practicing. I had a karaoke machine and I hooked it up to my TV and I was just performing, or sat in front of a mirror, right? Whatever it took to hone my craft. It's all scripted. It's all scripted.
Right. And I think it's interesting that you're saying that, because in sales, what I found is that the people that produce at the highest level are super scripted, right? When they're speaking to whoever they're speaking to, it seems natural to that person, but there's a method to everything that's being said in that pitch, right? When I started role playing, one of the first people that I role played with, his skill level was extremely high. So as I'm going through the role play, going through the questions, at the end of the role play, because he was very courteous, he goes, Chris, do yourself a favor and do not modify this script until you've completely internalized it. Once you've internalized it, then you have permission to get creative and make it yours. Because until then, the delivery is not going to be great. And every time you have the dialogue, it's going to come off a little bit different. So once you're scripted, then you can get creative. And I'm sure that's the exact same thing that probably happens on stage with comedians.
Yeah. Yep. Immediately, you don't want to deviate, from what you're doing, right? And the good thing about doing that is that when you get so rehearsed and so versed in what you're doing, what you're saying, every movement, every word, is that you can now handle unexpected things that come up in conversations, or in the case of doing stand-up,
right.
A heckle, right? Something happening in the audience, or even a plate dropping on the floor or something. These are distractions. These are moments that are not built into the dialogue.
Right.
So you have to be able to prepare to handle those things in those moments, right? You look at sports, it's the same thing, right? They're so practiced, but it's when the moments when things don't go right where your practice comes in to play, right?
Correct.
So same thing whether we're doing stand-up comedy or even having a sales conversation, it's you can tell the person who's rehearsed, who's done their homework, those are the people that are less shaken by unexpected moments.
And the most experienced, right? Because the more you're at it, the better your results are clearly going to be. Bobby, can you think of any instances where your background in comedy you feel has been the secret weapon for you?
Well, that's interesting because initially it was the opposite. I put my comedy in my pocket and I left it there because I was so afraid of people thinking that I was this clown, just this silly person. And so I would be so serious in these conversations, kind of like I am now. You know what I mean? It's like I would come off I would not look for any type of humor or any type of, and that's so unnatural because comedy is all around us. It's in every moment. There's something humorous to be found if you're open to it, right? Not even looking for it, but just open to it. So I learned after a period of time, and other colleagues, people even like yourself, that said, "Hey, that's an amazing advantage you have. That you've done comedy, that you have that humor. Why not inject that into your conversations where it's applicable?" And so then it became the balance of figuring out what that meant, because doing stand-up and performing it is very different than trying to interject that into a sales conversation. So what it really means, though, is just, again, like I was saying earlier, being open, right? Being open to those moments,
right,
where you can laugh.
Correct.
So it absolutely has become a valuable tool that I've used in my conversations every day now.
In sales, we have a lot of rejection, right? There's setbacks that happen. How do you feel that the thick skin that you get, right, being a comedian, how do you feel that's been to your advantage?
It's an advantage in the sense of, again, it comes down to repetition, really, right? It's not that, I'm funny so I can handle this. I'm still a human being, and no one likes rejection. Right. So you always feel the sting of a hard no or a mean no. But I think what happens is through the repetition, I think that is where the thick skin gets built. And then the humor helps, because now you can just laugh at it too and go, all right, well, I wasn't their cup of tea. On to the next one, right? Because, it's funny when, going back to doing stand-up, you could be in front of hundreds of people and everyone's laughing, erupting with laughter. And then there's that one person that's just looking at you with stone face, right? And all of our attention goes to that person. Because it's like, oh my God, they're not laughing. So that's our ego going, doing, backflips inside of us at that moment. So the goal is to, I think, focus on what is working. Everyone else is enjoying you in that moment, and not focusing on what may not be working. And then, flipping that into a real estate, scenario when we're making our calls, you're not going to get everybody, right? In fact, the majority of people say no, but you use that as fuel to keep moving on to the next one.
I'd say probably 95%, right, of the conversations that we have lead to no's, if not even a little bit more. That's just part of the business, and you must learn to be thick-skinned, right? So comedy often involves improvisation, right? So how does improvisation become beneficial when you're in a transaction or in a negotiation?
Because again, you're dealing with human beings, right? And so you're connecting back and forth with each other, and you can't predict what they're going to say, right? Just because your dialogue teaches you or your experience teaches you to ask these questions or to say these things doesn't mean that the other person is going to respond accordingly.
Right.
So where improvisation kicks in is, okay, when the unexpected happens, being prepared for that. And so that you can guide that conversation back to the course that you want it to be on and get that result that you're looking for. So I think that's where the improvisation is a powerful tool in what we do. It basically just means being flexible and not being rigid or not holding on to our egos in those moments, really taking that quiet breath. Okay, something happened there, didn't go our way. How can I deal with that in that moment? Smile,
right?
Ask a question, acknowledge what they just said.
I think that's important because I've been meditating for probably about the last year and a half. Mm-hmm. And my biggest takeaway is the breath, right? Just taking the breath at moments of stress where you can just get back to center, right? Center yourself. I think that's so key. Mm-hmm. Another thing that comes to mind is putting the other person first. As crazy as that sounds, right? Because sometimes we just get caught up in our own head, our own thoughts, in our own needs and wants, and the financial aspect of the gain, that you actually put the other person to the side, which is horrible when you think about it. So genuinely caring about the other person, what's best for them, I feel that's the easiest way of having a successful, right?
And it takes the pressure off of you too, right? Because now I'm focusing on you, so that gets you out of your head space and in your stress or nerves or whatever it is, right? By putting the attention on them, it's one of the best things that you can do to produce the outcome that you're looking for, and that's to help the other person.
Completely agreed. So Bobby, what final insight would you provide to any other real estate agents, sales professionals, right, on how, based on what they've heard today and maybe something that they haven't heard today, that they could implement in their business, maybe in their dialogue, in their psyche, right? As far as to how they could benefit from humor with their sales career. Any last tidbits for them?
Yeah, be open, right? You're talking to another human being who needs your help. So again, by being open and just think of yourself as a canvas, a blank canvas, and whatever paint, whatever colors come on, you know what I mean? You go with it. You don't fight and say, oh, I don't like that. I don't like that color. I don't want that. Be less resistant, be more open, be more curious. Curiosity, I think, is one of the best tools that you could ever have, right? And curiosity is what? It's asking those questions and listening for their responses. And when the opportunity comes, laugh, right? Don't be afraid to call something out. Acknowledge those moments whenever possible. The sooner you create that laughter in these conversations, the further ahead that you get with that person, right? The closer you bring them in, because you just made them feel good in that moment, in an otherwise tense moment.
So I heard Brian Tracy say once, he was talking about the radio station WIIFM. Have you heard of that radio station?
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably one of the best stations that anyone can listen to. Tell them what that stands for.
That's the station that most people listen to, right? Which is What's in It for Me.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can tune into their radio station, whether it's with humor, whether it's with genuine, authentic listening, right, that definitely puts you a step ahead. So, Bobby, thanks for joining the show today. And how can our audience reach out to you if they're looking for anything real estate related in New Jersey? How can they reach you?
They can call me, they can email me, they can go to my IG page, bobbyjohnson.realestate. I'm happy to help out however I can, answer any questions. whatever it is that I can do to be a resource for people, please let me know.
Awesome. Great. And we'll go ahead and make sure and put all of your information down below. So today, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to subscribe, comment on what your takeaway, your best takeaway has been from this episode today. Whatever nuggets you feel you could apply and benefit from, please comment down below.